Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening a file that I have been itching to get into for a long time. It's a story about a figure who, for the better part of 2 decades, has been the invisible hand and sometimes the very visible fist of the modern music industry.
It's a name that really acts like a Rorschach test, you know? You say it and people either see this like brilliant business strategist who basically invented the modern pop star, or they see the ultimate villain of the artists' rights movement. There's almost no in between.
We're talking, of course, about Scooter Braun. And I think the timing for this is it's perfect because we're recording this in February 2026. The dust has, for the most part, finally settled.
It really has.
If you've only been reading headlines on Twitter or X or, whatever we're calling it this week, you might just know him as the guy Taylor Swift hates.
Yeah, or the guy who discovered Bieber. And that's it.
Exactly. And that is such a surface-level reading of what happened.
Oh, completely. Because by the time he retired from artist management back in 2024, he had fundamentally altered the infrastructure of how celebrity works. And now, sitting here in 2026, looking at his corporate role at Hybe, we can actually see the full picture, the whole arc.
And that's our mission today.
Yeah.
We're going to move past the memes, past the Stan Wars. We want to understand the mechanics. How does a frat boy from Emory University, who didn't even graduate, by the way,
right?
How does he end up becoming a billionaire CEO and a board member of a massive South Korean entertainment giant?
It's the mogul method. And honestly, looking at the biography and the financial filings we have in front of us, it's a masterclass in recognizing and creating leverage. He never just took the job he was given. He always tried to buy the building the job was housed in.
So let's rewind. We need to get out of the boardroom and go all the way back to the dorm room. Because the origin story here is actually, it's kind of wild. It starts in Atlanta, but he's not from Atlanta.
No, he's a total transplant. Born in New York City in 1981, raised in Cobb, Connecticut, Scott Samuel Braun. And his background is, it's very traditional, but also very intense. His grandparents were Hungarian immigrants who fled the revolution in 1956, and they were survivors of the Holocaust.
Wow.
So that's the family history he's born into. His father, Irvin, was a dentist, but also a high school basketball coach on the side.
Okay, that combination explains a lot. The precision of a dentist and the competitive fire of a coach.
Exactly. I mean, you don't grow up in a house like that without inheriting a certain kind of drive. And it showed. He was class president at Greenwich High School, a total golden boy on paper.
For sure. So he follows that path, heads down to Emory University in Atlanta to play basketball. And this is where the timeline gets really interesting. It's the early 2000s in Atlanta. And you have to picture the scene. The city is just exploding culturally.
It's the center of the universe for music.
You've got Outkast, Ludacris, Jermaine Dupri. The Dirty South movement is literally taking over the world. And right in the middle of all this, you have this, Jewish kid from Connecticut who decides he's going to be a party promoter.
And not just, like you said, dorm room parties.
No, not keg stands in the basement parties. He starts organizing these massive professional events.
He had a hustle that was, frankly, just unusual for a college student. He wasn't just putting up flyers on campus. He was building a real network. By 2002, he's maybe 19 or 20 years old, and he gets hired to plan the after parties for the anger management tour.
Hold on, we need to pause on that, the anger management tour. Because for listeners who might be a bit younger, this wasn't just some tour.
No, this was an event.
This was Eminem at the absolute dizzying peak of his powers, touring with Ludacris. It was arguably the biggest hip-hop tour of the entire decade.
For sure.
And a college dropout is running the nightlife for it.
Across 5 major cities. That right there is the sink or swim moment. I mean, if you mess up the security or the VIP list for Eminem's entourage, you're done. Your career is over before it starts.
It's blacklisted forever.
Forever. But Braun didn't mess up. He crushed it. And that is when Jermaine Dupri spots him.
The legend. JD. The man behind So Too Def Records.
Right. Dupri sees this kid, controlling the crowd, managing the chaos, making everything run smoothly. And he doesn't offer him an internship. He doesn't offer him a junior A&R job. He offers him the position of executive director of marketing for So Def.
That is just, it's laughable. I mean, can you imagine being 20 years old and your business card says executive director of a major hip-hop label?
It's insane. And it really speaks to a specific talent that Braun had from the very beginning, code switching. He could walk into a boardroom with corporate sponsors and speak their language, ROI, brand synergy, all of that. And then he could walk into the studio with Ludacris and speak that language. He was the bridge. He was the translator.
And he just kept leveling up. He was organizing parties for the 2003 NBA All-Star Game, for Britney Spears' Onyx Hotel Tour in 2004. He was just everywhere.
You made himself indispensable.
But then, in 2005, he leaves So-So. And this, to me, is where I think the mogul method really, truly begins, because he brokers a deal.
The Pontiac deal.
The Pontiac deal.
This is the Rosetta Stone for his entire career. We absolutely have to unpack this.
Please do. Because usually when we think of music managers back then, we think of guys booking gigs or getting their artists on the radio. This was something completely different.
So Ludacris has a music video coming out. The old model would be, you try to get a car company to pay you $20,000 to put their car in the video.
Right, basic product placement.
Yeah, basic product placement. Braun goes to Pontiac General Motors, and he doesn't pitch product placement. He convinces them to build an entire campaign around Ludacris. It wasn't just, let's feature the car. It was, let's integrate the car into the artist's brand and integrate the artist into the car's marketing.
And the number is what's staggering. It was a $12 million deal.
$12 million in 2005.
That is a massive, massive spend for a car company on one artist.
It was astronomical at the time. And the insight there, the thing that Braun saw that maybe others didn't, was that hip-hop wasn't a niche anymore. It was the dominant youth culture. Corporate America was desperate to touch it, but they were scared. They didn't know how.
Right. They didn't speak the language.
Exactly. And Braun basically walked in and said, I can translate for you. He leveraged the cool of the artist to sell the commodity of the car, and it worked.
And presumably, he took a very, very healthy commission on that $12 million.
Enough to set up his own shop. He goes independent. He starts consulting for the Atlanta Hawks basketball team. He's building his own little fiefdom in Atlanta. But he's still looking for that one thing, that one asset that he can build from the ground up that he can own.
Which brings us to 2008, the year of what our source calls the happy accident.
The click heard round the world. It sounds like a myth, but it's true.
The story has become almost mythical at this point. So Scooter is sitting at his computer late at night, supposedly trying to find a video of a different singer. I think it was an R&B artist he was scouting. And he accidentally clicks a related link on the side of the page. And up pops this grainy, pixelated video of a 12-year-old kid.
It's a little kid.
A little kid sitting on a plastic chair in what looks like a living room in Stratford, Ontario, singing a Neo song.
Justin Bieber.
Now, be honest. If you saw that video in 2008, would you have seen a billion-dollar globe-spanning empire?
Absolutely not. I mean, not a chance. I would have seen a cute kid with a really nice voice.
Yeah.
And that's why Braun is who he is, and I am not. He saw something totally different.
What did he see?
He saw stickiness. That's the word he uses. He saw that this kid had a charisma that somehow transcended the terrible video quality. There was just something there.
But the industry did not agree with him at all.
No. And this is really important context. In 2008, YouTube was for cat videos and funny home movies. It was not a talent pool. When Braun started calling record labels saying, hey, I found a kid on the internet, they laughed at him.
Literally laughed at him?
They told him to his face, we don't sign YouTube kids. It wasn't a thing yet. He was too early.
So what did he do? He basically went into full-on detective mode, didn't he?
He did. He had to. He tracked down the school board in Stratford, Ontario, just to try and find Justin's mom, Patty Millette. And Patty was a very tough sell.
Understandably.
For sure. She was a devout Christian, a single mom, extremely protective of her son. She was not thrilled about some fast-talking guy from the Atlanta hip-hop scene calling her out of the blue about her son.
I can just imagine that first phone call.
Yeah.
Hi, trust me, you should fly with your preteen son to the city where Outkast lives. It'll be great.
It's a hard pitch. And he said in interviews that he had to rely on his own religious background, actually. He connected with her through their shared faith and values. He had to convince her he was trustworthy.
And eventually it worked.
It did. She finally agrees to fly down to Atlanta for a trial run. And once they are on his turf, Braun moves fast. He gets Justin in the studio immediately, gets him in front of Usher.
But Justin Timberlake was also in the mix at that point, right? There was a competition.
It became a full-on bidding war. Timberlake wanted to sign him, Usher wanted to sign him, and Braun played them off each other beautifully.
So why did they go with Usher?
In the end, they went with Usher because the mentorship deal just made more sense, and they formed a new company, a joint venture, RBMG, Raymond Braun Media Group. Usher's last name is Raymond.
And this is the key distinction. This is so important. Braun wasn't just hired as the manager.
No.
He was the partner. He owned half the asset.
Correct. He owned the discovery. And because the major labels were still skeptical, they were still saying, YouTube kid, we don't know. Braun and Bieber had to do something totally revolutionary at the time. They bypassed the radio.
They just ignored it.
They went straight to the fans on Twitter and YouTube.
I remember this so vividly. The one-time video. The constant tweeting. He would have Justin reply to fans individually for hours.
He weaponized the parasocial relationship before we even had a word for it. He realized that if you could build an army of teenage girls on the internet, the radio stations would have no choice but to play the record. The demand would be overwhelming. He created the Beliebers.
It was the first time, I think, we saw social media used to just brute force a star into the mainstream.
It was a siege, and it worked. The kid became the biggest pop star on the planet, and suddenly Scooter Braun isn't the party planner from Atlanta anymore. He's the genius. He's the guy who cracked the code.
And now everyone wanted the code.
Everybody wanted the code. He signs Ariana Grande in 2013.
Which was a completely different kind of challenge, right? She wasn't an unknown. She was a Nickelodeon star.
Mm-hmm. And breaking a child actor out of that Disney or Nickelodeon mold is notoriously difficult. They usually crash and burn, or they just fade away.
Right. The curse of the child star.
But Braun navigated her transition into a legitimate, high-fashion, global pop diva almost flawlessly. It was incredible to watch. Then he brings in Kanye West for a time, Demi Lovato, J Balvin, Martin Garrix.
The roster just becomes this, it's a who's who. It reads like the Billboard Top 100 for the entire decade. Carly Rae Jepsen, Tori Kelly, David Guetta, the Kid Leroy.
Hit after hit after hit. But managing that much ego, that much talent, that much pressure. I mean, it has to be a complete nightmare.
It's got to be high stress. And we saw the cracks eventually, right? The relationship with Kanye imploded, which, to be fair, is kind of a pattern with Kanye.
Right. That's not unique to Scooter.
And then in 2023, there was that bizarre week where it seemed like every headline was that someone else had fired him.
Yeah.
Demi left, Ariana left for a bit, then came back. The media was basically writing his obituary as a manager.
They were. But the thing is, he had already pivoted by then. And this is where we get into the empire section of this whole story. Because while he was managing all these stars, he was quietly, methodically building a corporation behind them. SB Projects.
Because he realized, I think, that management is ultimately a service business.
It is. You serve the client. And if the client decides to leave, you have nothing. All that work and your revenue stream is gone overnight. He wanted to be in the asset business. He wanted to own intellectual property.
Okay, so give us a concrete example of how that manifested.
Okay, look at Never Say Never, the Justin Bieber documentary from 2011.
The 3D movie, I remember.
A traditional manager would have just let a studio like Paramount make that movie, and maybe they'd take an executive producer fee, a nice little payday.
Sure.
Braun produced it himself through his own company, SB Projects. The budget was $13 million. It grossed nearly $100 million worldwide.
That is a staggering return on investment. Just unbelievable.
Domestically, it was the highest-grossing music documentary of all time until the Taylor Swift era's Tour movie came along years later. Braun captured the value. He didn't just rent Bieber out to a studio. He created a product around him that he owned.
And he didn't stop with music docs. I was actually surprised when I was looking through the sources to see his name on the credits for Dave, the show on FX with Lil Dicky.
Which is a fantastic show, by the way.
It is. And it was the most watched comedy in the history of the FX network. That's not a vanity credit. That is a legitimate, massive hit TV show.
And he also executive produced Scorpion on CBS, which was a huge procedural drama that ran for 4 seasons. He signed a first-look deal with Amazon Studios. He even launched a company called Mythos Studios with David Maisel.
David Maisel, that's the guy who founded Marvel Studios, right?
The founding chairman, the guy who came up with the whole cinematic universe idea. They started a company to produce new comic book franchises. This is classic portfolio theory 101.
Explain that for us. What do you mean?
If you're just a manager, your income is volatile. It depends entirely on whether Justin wants to tour this year or whether Ariana has a hit song. It goes up and down. But if you own a piece of a TV show that's in syndication or a movie that's on streaming services or a comic book IP, that revenue is much more stable and predictable. He was hedging his bets against the volatility of pop stars.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the move that turned him from a very rich guy into a certified billionaire.
Yeah.
The formation of Ithaca Holdings and the eventual sale to Hybe.
This is it. This is the pinnacle of the mogul method. In April of 2021, Hybe, the South Korean entertainment powerhouse, the company behind BTS, comes knocking.
So let's ask the question, why did Hybe need Scooter Braun? They had BTS. I mean, they were literally printing money. They were the biggest thing on the planet.
They had the biggest band in the world, yes, but they were also dangerously dependent on that one single asset. And they had global ambitions. They didn't want to just be a K-pop company. They wanted to be a global music company.
And they needed the foothold in the U.S.
They needed a real foothold in the U.S. market. They needed the connections to radio, to brands, to the whole Western media infrastructure. Scooter Braun was that infrastructure. He'd spent 15 years building it.
So they didn't just hire him. They bought his entire holding company, Ithaca.
The whole thing. For an estimated price of $1.5 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Just let that sink in.
It's an incredible number. $1 billion for a management and media company. It was unheard of. So Braun becomes the CEO of the new Hybe America, and he gets a seat on the board of the parent company in Korea. It was a massive validation. He effectively sold his hustle, his network, to a multinational conglomerate.
And I remember reading at the time that he really took care of his people in that deal.
He did, and this is an important detail, I think. He carved out about $50 million of his own stock allocation from the deal and gifted it to his longtime staff, the people who had been with him for years. And his biggest clients, Bieber and Ariana Grande, they each got about $10 million in stock as well. He made sure that the people who helped build the empire got a piece of the exit.
So he becomes the CEO of Hybe America, and he starts making moves. He acquires Quality Control Music for $300 million.
QC, the label home of Migos, Lil Baby, Lil Yachty.
Right, bringing Coach K and P. Kevin Lee and Pierre Thomas, who are absolute legends in the Atlanta trap scene, under the Hybe umbrella.
It was such a full circle moment, wasn't it? The kid who started out promoting parties in Atlanta comes back 20 years later and buys the biggest, most important hip-hop label in the city.
And then, in 2024, the mic drop. He officially announces he's retiring from day-to-day artist management.
He steps away from the grind, no more late-night calls from artists having breakdowns on tour. He focuses purely on the CEO role, and then in 2025, he transitions again to a board member and senior advisor role. He's fully corporate now. The transformation is complete.
But we cannot tell this story. We just can't, without stopping at the darkest chapter. The biggest stain on the resume, the feud that probably generated more tweets than the 2024 election.
We have to talk about the Taylor Swift Masters dispute.
Yes, and we have to treat this carefully because people have very, very strong feelings about it. But let's just stick to the business facts as they're laid out in our sources.
Yeah.
In 2019, Braun's company, Ithaca, acquires Big Machine Label Group.
Okay. Big Machine was Scott Borchetta's label. Borchetta's the guy who discovered Taylor Swift when she was just a teenager in Nashville. He signed her. And crucially, the contract she signed back then stated that the label, Big Machine, owned the master recordings of her first 6 albums.
Okay, we need to do an ELI 5 here, master recordings. Why does owning the master matter so much more than, say, writing the song?
Think of it like a house. The publishing rights, which Taylor owned, that's like the blueprint of the house, the lyrics, the melody. But the master is the physical house itself. It's the actual original recording that you hear on Spotify or the radio. So if you want to use that specific recording in a movie or in a TV commercial or even just stream it, you have to license it from the owner of the master. It is the primary revenue-generating asset from a recording.
So when Braun bought Big Machine, from his point of view, he wasn't trying to hurt Taylor Swift personally.
From a purely business perspective, no. He was buying a catalog of incredibly valuable assets that generate predictable, long-term cash flow. It's like buying an apartment building to collect rent every month. He paid over $300 million for the label, and the value was almost entirely in those 6 Swift albums.
But Taylor saw it very, very differently.
She saw it as a profound betrayal. She called it her worst-case scenario. She claimed she had been bullied by Braun in the past. She referenced some social media stuff involving Bieber and Kanye. And now, this person she despised owned her life's work, her diaries, her teenage years.
And the central point of controversy was this. Did she have a chance to buy them herself before he did?
That is the core of the he said, she said. Scott Borchetta, the founder of Big Machine, he released texts and statements claiming she had been offered a deal to earn her masters back over time.
Right.
Taylor's side claimed that deal was manipulative, that she had to earn one old album back for every new one she turned into the label. She wanted to buy them outright for cash, and she says she was never given that specific opportunity before Braun swooped in and bought the whole company.
The public fallout was it was nuclear. She completely weaponized her fan base against Braun.
It was a PR catastrophe for him, an absolute disaster. But, and here's the cold, hard business truth of the matter, he still won. Financially.
Yeah, how did he win?
Because in 2020, just about a year after buying the label, his company Ithaca sold just the master rights to those 6 Taylor Swift albums to a private equity fund called Shamrock Holdings.
For how much?
The reported price was $405 million.
Wait. So he bought the entire label with all his artists for around $300 million?
Little over 300, yeah.
And then he sold just the Taylor Swift masters for $405 million.
Correct. Ithaca is estimated to have made a net profit of $265 million on that specific flip. Braun's personal net from the entire Big Machine deal by 2023 was close to $400 million. He treated the art like a stock, he bought it, it appreciated, and he sold it for a massive gain.
But Taylor kind of had the last laugh, in a way. The Taylor's version re-recordings.
Which was a genuinely brilliant strategic move. By re-recording all those old songs, she created new masters that she owned completely. She encouraged her fans, movie studios, ad agencies, everyone to use her versions, which effectively devalued the asset that Braun had sold to Shamrock.
And finally, in May of 2025, the headline we all knew was coming eventually. Taylor Swift acquired the rights to her first 6 albums.
She got them back. We don't know the exact details, if she bought them outright from Shamrock or if there was some complex asset swap. But the loop is now closed. She owns her work. Braun made his hundreds of millions in profit. It was a brutal, ugly war between art and commerce. And somehow, both sides ended up richer.
It really just highlights the fundamental difference in their worldviews. For Braun, it was a financial transaction. For Swift, it was deeply personal. And I don't think those two perspectives can ever truly reconcile.
No, and it changed the music industry forever. Every young artist signing a deal now fights for control of their masters because of this saga. It was a landmark case.
Okay, let's pivot away from the drama to the other, maybe less known way. Braun actually made his billion, because while all this was going on while he was fighting with Taylor Swift, he was also quietly being one of the smartest venture capitalists in Silicon Valley.
This is the investments chapter, and frankly, this is why he's a billionaire. The music money is fantastic, but the tech money is generational wealth.
So he's a partner in a firm called TQ Ventures. What did they get into early?
Get ready for this list. It's kind of staggering. Uber, Spotify, Waze, Dropbox, Pinterest, Lyft, Liquid IV.
Hold on. He was an early investor in Uber.
Very early.
And Spotify. So how does a music manager get into the seed rounds of these? I mean, these are tech unicorns. How did you get a seat at that table?
It's all about access. Back in, say, 2010, 2011, these tech founders were desperate for cultural relevance. They were desperate for cool. They needed celebrities to use their apps to get them to catch on.
Right, to get mainstream adoption.
Exactly. So Braun would go to them and say, I can get Justin Bieber to tweet about your new app, or I can get Usher to use it on stage, but I don't want cash for that. I want equity. I want a piece of the company.
That is just, it's genius.
Yeah.
He traded his clients' fame for stock.
Precisely. He used his clients' cultural capital to buy his way into the cap tables of what would become the biggest tech companies of the decade. So when Uber went public, when Spotify had its IPO, those payouts for him personally just dwarfed the commission he was making on a Bieber tour.
And that explains the net worth crossing the $1 billion mark in 2021. It wasn't just the Hybe deal. It was the cumulative effect of all of these tech investments cashing out.
It creates a flywheel effect. The more money he made in tech, the more leverage and power he had in music. The more power he had in music, the more access he got in tech. It just fed itself.
And, you know, he hasn't been hoarding it all. We should definitely talk about the other side of the ledger here, the philanthropy and the politics. Because for a guy who is so often painted as this cartoon villain, he does a lot of heavy lifting for charity.
He does. And it's significant, high-impact work. Take them, March for Our Lives. After the Parkland school shooting, Braun didn't just write a check. He and George Clooney were instrumental in actually organizing the march in D.C. He used his logistical expertise, I mean, remember he's a tour manager at heart, to handle the operations of a massive political protest.
And Make-A-Wish. That's another big one for him.
He's on their board of directors now. But even before that, he and his roster of artists had granted more wishes than any other single organization or celebrity group in the charity's history. It's a huge commitment. And we have to mention the Stuck With You project during COVID.
Right, the duet with Bieber and Ariana Grande.
Mm-hmm. That song single-handedly raised millions of dollars for the First Responders Children's Foundation, funding grants for the kids of frontline workers. He knows how to mobilize his resources for a cause.
He's also been very active and very vocal regarding the Middle East.
It's a very personal issue for him, given his background. After October 7th, he became one of the most visible figures in Hollywood advocating for the release of the Israeli hostages. He flew to Israel. He spoke at a massive rally in Tel Aviv in December of 2023.
But he also tried to kind of bridge the divide, didn't he? He didn't just take one side.
He did. A few months later, in March 2024, he launched a major fundraising initiative with the organization care.org, and that was specifically for Palestinian relief in Gaza. He has tried to maintain this very difficult position of supporting his Jewish heritage while also publicly acknowledging the humanitarian disaster happening on the other side. It's a very tough tightrope to walk, especially in today's climate. But he hasn't stayed silent.
And politically in the U.S., he's a pretty big deal for the Democrats, right?
Oh, a mega donor. He hosted a huge fundraiser for Hillary Clinton at his house back in 2015. He did the same for Kamala Harris in 2019. He's deeply, deeply embedded in the Democratic Party fundraising machine.
So let's touch briefly on the personal side.
Yeah.
Because his life, for better or worse, has been tabloid fodder for years.
For sure. He was married to Yael Cohen. She's the founder of the charity Fuck Cancer back in 2014. For a while, they were a real power couple. They have 3 kids together. But they divorced in 2022.
Right. And that was finalized right around the time his professional life was going through all that chaos we mentioned earlier, with clients leaving.
Yeah, it was a tumultuous period for him all around.
And now, it's 2026. Who is he seeing?
Well, the reports, as of late 2025, have him dating the actress Sydney Sweeney.
The actress, of course.
It keeps him in the ecosystem, you know. Even if he's a corporate executive now, he's still dating one of the biggest, most talked about stars in Hollywood. It just reinforces that brand of being right at the center of the culture.
Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground. The college parties, the Pontiac deal, the Bieber discovery, the empire building with SB projects, the billion-dollar Hybe acquisition, the Taylor Swift war, the tech billions.
It is an absolutely exhausting list for a guy who is still only in his mid-40s.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. What is this? So what here? If I'm a listener, why does Scooter Braun's career actually matter to me and the music I listen to?
I think he represents the death of the old music business and the birth of the asset management business that just happens to deal in music.
Unpack that. That's interesting.
Before Scooter, a manager was kind of a glorified babysitter and booking agent. You make sure the artist showed up on time and, didn't do drugs in public. Scooter looked at an artist and he saw a startup. He saw IP. He saw a media platform. He realized that the music was, in a way, just the marketing for the larger brand.
And he proved that you could build real, institutional, sellable value around that brand.
Exactly. By selling to Hybe for $1 billion, he showed that a management company, a soft business, could be valued like a tech company. He legitimized the entire industry in the eyes of Wall Street and private equity.
But is there a downside to that approach?
The downside is exactly what we saw with the Taylor Swift saga. When you treat art strictly as an asset, as just another line item on a spreadsheet to be bought and sold, you risk stripping away the humanity from it. You alienate the creator. You invite rebellion.
And maybe that's the fundamental tension that's going to define the next decade of music. You have these massive conglomerates like Hybe and Universal trying to own everything, and then you have artists fighting for control and ownership of their own work.
That is the battleground, absolutely.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Scooter Braun officially retired from management in 2024 to go sit on a corporate board. Taylor Swift bought her masters back in 2025 to own her artistic legacy. In a way, they both won their respective games. But look at the charts today, in 2026. How many organic grassroots stars are there, really? Or is everything just an algorithm managed by a holding company and optimized for TikTok engagement from day one?
It feels like that happy accident of discovering a Justin Bieber on YouTube just can't happen anymore because the algorithm is too controlled now. There are no accidents.
Exactly. So does Scooter Braun's career, this whole arc we've discussed, suggest that the future of music isn't really about the music at all. Is it just about who owns the platforms and the IP that control it?
I think we're already seeing the answer to that.
On that cheerful note, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you next time.
Take care.